हिस्ट्री बुक्स, हमारी बुक्स में भी बताया गया है कि जो इंडिया का लैंड है उसने बहुत सारे एम्पायर्स को फ्लरिश करने में मदद की है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल दी मगध एम्पायर, राइट. एंड अर्लियर ऑल्सो देयर वाज इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर, क्योंकि इतने एम्पायर्स को के लिए काम आया है हमारा एग्रीकल्चर, हमारे फार्मर्स. एंड माई क्वेश्चन टू यू इज, with the passage of time, जिस तरीके से लोग सिटी लाइफ की तरफ ज्यादा जा रहे हैं, so the importance of agriculture is somewhere diminishing, right? So what do you feel about this thing? So my question is, as the people are dwelling more towards the city life, they're somewhere forgetting about the importance of agriculture. So what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on this thing?
Well, first of all, I must profusely thank the organizers, I.I.M.U.N, a lovely team of volunteers have been literally pampering us since our arrival. And I think by far I would Kalpana will agree with me. I don't usually go to many lit fests because most of them are turning very commercial. This has been the best so far, and the reason is that I'm getting to probably interact with a very new, young audience, which and as I see the faces, I already think that I'm from the dinosaurian age. So I think I must thank for that. Where do I begin? I mean, in the civilizational process, from the hunter-gathering age to what we call the modern civilization, you cannot skip the 10-15,000 years history of agriculture, because humans began to domesticate plants, domesticate animals. We annualized agriculture from what used to be a landscape-based or forest ecosystem. We annualized domesticated plant varieties, and for those of you who are studying history, politics, we must understand that grain, the advent of grain, the storage of grain, is really the beginning of the first storage of carbon. And I mean, the oil comes much later. Now, all that 10-15,000 years of history gets tweaked or altered with the industrial age. And we are already in the postmodern age where industrialization goes on, agriculture has been lagging behind, and all that has to do with the kind of economies that have evolved. And the economies tend to distance humans from their, kind of reference point. So with agriculture also, not just in India, it's a global process. In India, it is more so stark because our populations, more than 60% of India's population rely on agriculture as a sector, directly and indirectly. And therefore, I like to expand the scope of our discussion not just to agriculture, because rural India or countryside is a universe unto itself. We have 833 million plus people living in the countryside according to the 2011 census. And there are agriculturists, meaning people who farm, but there is a vast section of non-agriculturists who draw from the agrarian economy. There are artisans, there are folk artists, there are at least 1,000 different trades that exist in the countryside. And in the industrial and the post-industrial age, the urbanization has distanced people who consume food, or people who consume products that are manufactured or created in the countryside more and more. Today, one of the most defining aspects of our country is a large section of Indian urban population doesn't really get affected if there is a drought or if there is a failure of monsoon. But if I talk about 1970s or 1980s, not a very distant past, My parents would keep an eye on monsoons because monsoons define their family economy as well. So we are now a country where there are different parallel universes, if you will, where people living in the countryside, and we have vast geographical agroclimatic zones. We have nearly 24 agroclimatic zones spread about subzones from Kashmir down to Andamans. It's a very, very diverse universe. And I think it's a process, and I focus on processes rather than events. I think this particular period of what we call the postmodern world, where everything is like liquid, there's no guarantee of things surviving too long. I believe that India will have to turn back its focus away from the industrial service age, knowledge domain produced in the virtual world, and go back a little bit in a more serious manner to reimagining the countryside. We need to reimagine the countryside. It's going to take time, but there is no escaping that, because if millions rely on and live in the countryside with the history, the geography, there is a historiography to their existence. I don't covet, or I don't see a future where these many million peoples will be economically lagging. If culturally they are progressive, they are certainly economically lagging, and it's an untenable situation. I don't know whether that has been an answer, but I mean, it's a complex question with complex answers. So I'm sorry.
But sir, you gave a very good answer, and with this, like you told us about the importance of agriculture, and I have this question for you. Like, how can the youth contribute towards this sector, the agricultural sector, the youth sitting in front of us?
Yeah, like sir rightly said, see, of course, food is the lifeline for humanity, for every creation on earth, right? And today's reality is we actually, the image of the farmer that everybody carries in our head is that poor, starving, marginalized worker, who doesn't even have, scantily clad, doesn't have proper. I'm wondering, everybody else, every other industry is flourishing, and they are making lots of money. They are living a good lifestyle, and the farmer is somebody, And so when you ask youngsters, why are you not joining? You're not coming into this farming or agricultural sector. How do we call them into that sector? What is so promising about it? So because as a teacher, when I was teaching high school students, there was this small episode that comes to my mind where I was teaching it, and then towards the end of it, we just had a casual conversation, and I was asking them how many of you want to become doctors, engineers, astrophysicists, lawyers, whatever. So many hands shot up. And the moment I asked them how many would like to become farmers, they were shocked. And the first question was, ma'am, why would you even want this for us? Because is there a future in that? Don't you see the plight of farmers in our country? How could anybody want their children to go there? So for me, the question was, of course, farming and the agricultural sector is going to get hugely benefited from youth participation, and I'm going to come to that. But other than that, first thing is, what are we doing towards promoting a good image of farming in our country? There's farming everywhere. It's not only in India, it's everywhere, all over the world. But I don't see the distinction of how the farmers are so poor and marginalized in those countries. They are equally well, they're doing well. So why can't we have such a a very potent farming industry where youngsters want to actually, because they see other industries flourishing and they are able to make good money and they are having a good lifestyle, and of course they are drawn to it. But farming is not doing anything, that sector is not doing anything to showcase the youngsters that yes, come on in, we have a lot of opportunities here. So I want to see that change in perspective, and how we promote agriculture in our country, because this cannot go on like this. I feel like, is it food being the lifeline? How can you ignore it? Everybody wants food. You can live in space and you still need food to eat and nourish your body. You can't be eating computer chips just because you invent something new. You can keep inventing anything you want in this world. Right? Technology is improving. Just just look at the last 30 years. How much, even my generation, we couldn't have imagined the things which we are going through today in this world. But yet, have we found out an alternative for food that you can eat? That the farmer is not growing on ground? No. And the industrial food, you know what it is doing to our bodies. We are spending all our money in the hospitals right now. So that's what is industrial food doing. So we have to come back to the real, the sustainable farming, old practices that we have been following. And like Sir rightly said, we have to come back. Of course, it doesn't look like how we are going to do it, but it is going to happen. And I am very optimistic about it because there is no other way forward. And coming to how we can get up and why youngsters should be part of it, because there is so much of potential for innovation and entrepreneurship in agriculture. It's needed. A lot of technology is needed. And when youth come into this, they bring that with them, because they are in this, in today's world, they are living in this world, and they will be thinking differently about how can we make sure that our agricultural practices are better. And secondly, they'll actually bring more sustainable and organic ways of agriculture, the climate smart agriculture they'll bring in, because they are born into this crisis today of what we're facing with climate, right? So they know. We have our generation has done all the problems, they've created all the problems, but they are the ones who are in the receiving end. So they know that they don't want to continue this, right? So they will actually come up with a lot of innovative solutions, and I think that's very much needed in our agricultural sector right now. And of course, that will address the economic growth of our country. It will address, it will boost the local economies. It will give more opportunities to youngsters, employment opportunities in the farming sector, right? And of course, it will also eventually solve the food security issue that we are facing, So all of this together, plus I feel our youngsters will be the front runners who will take organic farming and sustainable practices and drive the change that we are looking for.
Absolutely, ma'am. And with your answer, I think you told us about the importance of village life, the agriculture, and you answered and you said one thing about a misconception that people think farmers are poor. Most of the people have this misconception. And now my next question is for Jaideep sir, that what are the major misconceptions? Like one ma'am told that people consider farmers as poor. But what according to you are the other misconceptions that people have about farmers or about agriculture in India?
Well, if I were to put it, instead of using the word misconception, I would rather use the word ignorance, which is slightly different from misconception. And I think to add to Kalpana's point, I would probably want, like the way I began understanding the countryside, is to first educate ourselves by meeting people. These days we are on the journeys which are virtual journeys. One day you are in Malaysia on Instagram, the other day you are in the US in some part, connecting, interacting with people there. It would be quite prescient for our youth today to kind of also chart out journeys that are local in the neighborhood farming communities, in the neighborhood communities where people are fishing. There must be students from coastal areas of Gujarat or the hinterland of Gujarat, Maharashtra. If we are able to educate ourselves as a beginning by conversations, by going into the countryside, I think that's a good starting point. I say ignorance because part of the problem, part of the ignorance is our own doing, in a sense that when I say our, I'm indicating at the media. Today's media is one of the most sort of resource-rich medias of our time. We have channels and newspapers and digital media platforms and YouTubers. But several studies point out that 0.001% of the space goes to the countryside, which is almost 60-70% of India's population. It is by design, it is by choice we are saying we don't want to report on them. I don't disagree with the fact that rural Indians today, if you superimpose the map of poverty of India, with a map of distress in agriculture sector and the countryside as a whole, then perfectly superimposed. Among the poorest of the country, the bottom 50%, would be from the farming communities and the urban poor. And who are the urban poor? These are again migrants who are skipping hunger back home in the villages and have decided to shift to urban spaces because there is no work there. Agrarian crisis is a structural, complex crisis of economic aspect, of ecological dimension, which also has climate dimension. There's a cultural crisis, there's a political crisis. So it's a cocktail of different problems interwoven into one. And so the biggest ignorance is the very, first of all, most Indians today don't know where their food is coming from. Look, when we eat edible oils, we are scarcely aware of how this particular edible oil, where does it come from? Are we really eating groundnut? What is cold pressed versus, not so cold pressed oil? Where is our packaged milk coming from? Where are the noodles being manufactured? What's going into that? We eat a lot of food, but we rarely understand or rarely go into the process of production and supply chain. Modern day agriculture is starkly different from years ago. Today's agriculture is a very industrial form of agriculture, which has accentuated the problem. If I may take a minute, for the benefit of the students, see, most of us today are concerned about problems in agriculture, meaning problems of economy, ecology, climate change, social structures within the agrarian community. That is what we talk about. I also report about that. But we must understand that agriculture itself is a problem. The problem of agriculture is you have to go back 10,000 years ago of how the agriculture, the evolution of agriculture completely tampered with the natural processes of food production. Food is an ecosystem, it cannot. But we tampered, we domesticated, we annualized, and that has become, there's a fantastic scientist called Wes Jackson. Some of you who study or want to read about agrarian economy, go look out for this name called Wes Jackson, W-E-S-J-A-C-K-S-O-N. Wes Jackson is an agrarian scientist, agriculture scientist, a very veteran agriculture scientist in the US, who says today's industrial agriculture is like a Ponzi scheme. We extract every year from the soils, and for an inch of soil, it takes 100,000 years to form 1 inch of the topsoil in which the food is grown. We have been extracting minerals forever, every year, year after every year, without really putting into it again. So it's a Ponzi scheme. We just need to extract. So, to put it in a nutshell, while India remains predominantly an agrarian country with a growing urban agglomerates, it is also increasingly becoming ignorant about our reference point. Where did this country, how did this whole food system begin? We have thousands and thousands of cuisines. We are also becoming a very monoculturist, agrarian landscape, where we are losing out not just languages spoken in the countryside, but also the kind of seed varieties, land races, local land races that once existed in this. So we are selecting, and it's the McDonaldization of agrarian landscape, and we are totally ignorant about it. Perhaps we perhaps eat the same rice day unto every day, the same milk that is first, the milk that is collected from a cow or a buffalo it is cut down into different parts before it is repackaged, re-engineered, and then sold to us with a shelf life. So I think my concern is more about ignorance than misconception, and I think both are interwoven, like one feeds the another. And I take the onus because today's reporters, there are very handful of few reporters who really go to the countryside, spend time, and explain to the population of why a lagging countryside, why a distress, a deepening distress in agrarian society is like a civilizational crisis for us. Because we used to sing these songs, Mere Desh Ki Dharti, Sona Ugle. All that is history. It's a passé. It's a glorious past. We have a far bigger conundrum of problems at our hands, and nobody knows, nobody has a clue. We are becoming several different countries within a country because of these sort of micro crises in the regional economies, particularly the rural economy. Yeah.
And your answer was very well explained. आपने बहुत डिटेल्स के साथ हमारी ऑडियंस को सब चीज़ें बताई हैं. And now कल्पना मैम आपसे सवाल पूछूंगी. And your journey has been very very interesting. एक बायोलॉजी टीचर से फार्मिंग की तरफ, like it's actually मतलब ज़मीन आसमान का अंतर होता है ना दोनों फील्ड्स में. It's totally different. So how was this transition in your life? How has your journey been? And I would मतलब मुझे लग रहा है I am very curious about the answer, and also the audience would be, because बायोलॉजी से फार्मिंग तक का सफर कैसा रहा है आपका?
See, that's exactly why I can empathize with why the urban population is not into farming. Like, generally when we talk about why students are not, the youngsters are not into it, so I can, because I am an urbanite, I'm a city dweller. So that is the whole point about how I was just having a 9-to-5 job. I've done my biotechnology, I studied, I had other hopes, and then finally I came to teaching for some reason, and then, that continued, and then it's like a rat race in the city, right? Then you have kids, and you have to think about their education and schooling, and our life as well. We are just running a race, literally. And then from that is, let's say, you can be, I was a teacher, you could be any professional in a city. Okay, and you will be doing the same thing. You'll be doing your job, you'll have to come home, think about what are you going to do, what are you going to eat, what are you going to shop for, all of that. And then from there, the point of, like you said, the transition happened because of a lot of different things. It was not just one pivotal, one moment something struck and then I just changed. It just started with, of course, being a biology teacher. Of course, I was part of all the eco clubs. I was part of the environmental team, and we were trying to educate children about how, environmental awareness, what is the degradation happening around us. So all of that was part of it. So that is happening. And then on the other side, I am wondering personally also, what is this food? I keep hearing a lot about the pesticide menace in food, right? So there's so much of pesticide that being used, and there's a lot of chemical fertilizers, and they are trying, a lot of things are coming up. All of you would have seen it. It's very scary to think that, so you can go and just buy some carrots, and you read about that the carrots have been dipped in some sort of a poisonous, concoction, and then that's how it is. It stays. It grows so big and it looks so bright orange in color, and then finally it also stays on the shelf for a long period of time. We also don't want it to decay quickly. So all of this, and that's about every vegetable, right? And you hear about it and they're spraying so many things on it, and then you're wondering, what are we eating really? We're running for money. Okay, we are running and we're making all the money in the world and trying to give ourselves a good life, our family a good life. But what are you eating 3 times a day? What am I putting it on my plate and eating it? Am I eating poison, literally? Slow poison. I'm feeding my children poison in the name of food, and I'm not even able to force my children to eat a lot of vegetables. Come on, eat a lot of vegetables. All of your parents would tell, eat a lot of veggies, it's good for you. And now I'm like, after seeing all those videos, I'm like, should I even tell them to eat it? Because I don't know what it is going to do to them. So this is another, point where I was like really frustrated. I said, okay, so what is the option? If I do have to go to the market and buy, everybody else, all of us who are not actually growing our food ourselves, we have to go to the market and buy whatever is available. Meaning we are completely helpless. Whatever is there, you buy. That's it. As consumer, I don't have any control. So that is so, it's a despair-inducing situation where you don't know, what am I going to do about it? I have money. That too, I mean, at least we are in the privileged section who can afford organic food actually. So I'm talking about the privileged. Imagine the other group, they can't even think about it. So I'm talking about privileged who can, maybe I'll give some extra money and get something good. And even in that sector, there's a lot of forgery happening. It's written organic, but it's really not. So that also I found. And then I said, okay, so what is the, so for anybody for that matter, if you are doing all the things that society tells us to be a successful person, you do everything and you're following all of that, but or the 3 meals you're eating so that you can be healthy and live a good life and have a good retirement fund and you can enjoy your life, that is not happening. That is not going to happen in reality because you're making all the money, but finally all that money is going to go to the hospitals because you will be sick over a period of time by eating all this food that we are eating. So that was another ticking point for me, and I said, okay, so that is not, I'm helpless. So it all started with not a very rosy idea about, oh, okay, I'll go have a nice little farm and grow food, right? It started like this with frustration, anger at the system. That, today, even if I have money, I cannot go and buy clean food. It's as simple as that. I go to the market, whatever is available, that's all I buy. So which means I do not have any control over my food. So that is such a helpless situation that you can't do anything about it. And the industrial agriculture or the food industry that is happening with the chemical and food industry, frustration, anger, all of that, And the third most important thing was the guilt factor, which finally pushed me to the ends. That is, I'm teaching my children, school children, you have to do something about this and you have to be, environment conservation, we should do this, we should do this. And at a personal level, what am I able to do? On a law, I'm maybe ticking off a small box. Okay, today we did some activity for environment conservation, done. And then next day you go back and do your own thing. Nothing changes, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. That's how it is. If you don't do anything about it, you can't expect something to change. So first I blamed the government, then the policies, policymakers, politicians. They should do it, somebody should do it, so that I live a good life. So I kept blaming everybody and then realized that nothing is happening. Even after 2 years of blaming, nothing changed. So ultimately what pushed me was, okay, it's not that I keep pointing at the problem and keep poking at it. Okay, this is the reality, this is what it is. Either I just, helplessly surrender and then say, okay, this is what life is. Or if I want change, I have to do something. And I can't be the one who can go and clean the ocean, the oil spill, or the agricultural industry. I can't do any of that. All I can do is what I can do as an individual, right? So at my home, what can I do? At my level, what can I do? So I just I don't know, there was this light bulb moment where I said, so I'm done blaming everybody around me. Government is not doing anything or nobody else is going to do anything. Today, if I want clean food, I'll grow my own food. That's it. And I need to, so whatever little changes, I said, okay, plastic is a menace, right? So I will reduce plastic. I won't use plastic in my home. I will compost the waste. I will, instead of going for a chemical alternative, I'll make something which is natural. I researched whatever I could, DIY, everything at home. So a lot of changes I wanted to bring in myself so that guilt, I was just trying to address the guilt first because I couldn't live with myself after that. I can keep telling and I can keep blaming everybody, but nothing is changing in the society. So like, okay, very cliched and oft-repeated posts like, be the change that you want in this world, right? That's exactly comes down to that, So I just thought I will be the change that I want to see. I can only change myself.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Nobody else. That is what led me to.
Very well said, very well said. I was also about to quote the same, कि be the change you want to see in others. And obviously what we do is कि हम लोग ना हमेशा दूसरों पे blame डालते हैं कि वो नहीं कर रहा तो मैं क्यों करूं, है ना? But we don't actually realize the fact that the change would begin from us only. तो हम लोग वो blame game खेलते हैं और उस चक्कर में कुछ होता नहीं है. The change is not done, right? So Jaideep sir, my next question is for you. That you've authored this book called Ram Rao, और उसमें आपने farmers के बारे में बात की है. If we talk about farmers face a lot of distress in their life, be it economical, financial, and what they go through we cannot even imagine, right? So I want to ask you about your book Ram Rao. You've narrated the story of one farmer, and why did you choose like the story of just one farmer, and what have you depicted in your book?
Well, in 1996, I began my career, and one of the defining stories from the region I come from was a sudden burst of suicides, unfortunate and tragic deaths of a lot of farmers every day, particularly the cotton farmers. And I began to report it, and it was also happening in the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, many states. At around 2007-8, having done this for 10-12 years at that point of time, I began to realize the multifaceted nature of this. And also a very common question that I would come across in many conferences and many family functions and colleagues meetings is, why are they killing themselves? What is happening? But I also realized that as a journalist and as a storyteller, I wouldn't want to write about the tragic fallout of a very major. I mean, I always believe and I always say that suicides or migration are a symptom of a far deeper problem that exists in agrarian society. And so how do you begin to explain such a complicated problem for a lay reader? Because otherwise, if you look at the literature on this subject, it is full of jargons, complicated terms, cliches, and my audience and my reader, I suppose my reader was a common reader interested, well-meaning people interested in this subject. So how do you tell a story? I don't want to simplify the problem, which is in fact complex, but I wanted to simplify the story. And so during one of my journeys in 2014, I came across my protagonist. This was the election coverage, the reporting, and I was moving around in my region where I got to know that such and such person from such and such village has survived. I mean, he survived the suicide. I had wanted to do a story on a couple that had went to the farm thinking that they are going to end their lives, and came back after talking through the problem, and they realized that they have kids and they could not do it. The problem with that story was I was not sure whether they were telling me the truth or whether they were making up. This was a far important, and the thing is, they didn't want me to write about them because I also needed permission from my protagonist. So my initial conversation was not so much about the book. I was concerned about him because I've seen many people who have been through depression, have attempted this step, made this step, would do it again. So I wanted to safeguard him. I wanted to make sure that he's all right. So it was basically, you can say, human empathy. I feel deeply about farmers, good and bad, whatever their nature. I just feel deeply about it. So Ramrao and he was all by himself. His wife he was no more. Both his daughters had got married. And he was in really, really deep psychological, emotional trauma. So my first year was to make sure that he survives that year and some of his tougher movements is seen through. In the second year, but I started keeping notes of our conversations. And as a journalist, you are trained to also keep notes of many other peripheral, contextual things that happen. Around the third year, I began to realize that it's time I ask him whether he'll allow me to write his story. It took quite some time for me to persuade him. He said, if I were dead, I would be a story. Why is it that now that I'm alive, why am I a story? That precisely was the point. I didn't want to write about deaths. I wanted to write about life. Life in the 21st century India. What is it like being a farmer in 21st century India, where people are already, reaching skies in a tech-savvy, rapid, technology-oriented life? What is it like to be a farmer? So through him, I could see, and it has a narrative. My book has a narrative, and I have not created that narrative. There was so much drama in that life, and so much drama that I've seen, that I didn't need anything, because from 1996 onward, I had a lot of material, a lot of history, a lot of things that I saw. The prime ministers visiting, several expert panels visiting, the Supreme Court intervening, the high courts, bashing the governments, a lot of experts thinking, a lot of universities trying to do something. So it was all there in front of me. I was witness to that. So I thought, through Ram Rao, it would be easier for me to access this subject and make it more accessible to my readers. That was purely an attempt. So from one, sometimes you can sort of portray multiple lives through the life. And Ram Rao kind of typified an Indian farmer, with all the problems within family, daughters' weddings, his dark humor, right, satire, his lonely journey as a farmer on the field. Like a writer, a farmer is a lonely farmer. Kalpana would know that. When you are on the farm, there's no one else but the sky and some mythical creature called God. And you need all the world's best wishes that, your crop survives. And if it has survived the nature, then it survives the wrath of the state or the markets. So there's a lot going on, and I thought, if I'm able to capture, the last point I want to make is, look at our literature today. The books that are coming out, fascinating non-fiction book scene is exploding in India. Diverse subjects, multiple subjects, but very little on the countryside, very little. There has been a 40-50-year-old gap in really what's happening in the countryside in terms of fictional, attempts to fictionalize life. If you look at OTT platforms, rural life is portrayed also in terms of crime, sex and sleaze. That's it. This is a set formula for anybody to sell good product. As a writer, as someone who is trying to seriously chronicle contemporary Indian life, despite the odds against journalists who want to do serious journalism, lack of resources, etc., I think it's time for us. I mean, stories are exploding. There's so much to write and report about from the countryside that one lifetime will not be sufficient. So I thought Ram Rao would be my first foray into book. Was I did a book called A Village Awaits Doomsday, which is not one full narrative. It's a compendium of stories about people who are displaced by development projects. I have been kind of very curious about this whole concept of development, like the concept of sustainability. Sustainability means far different things to different people. It's a philosophy rather than a concept. Similarly, development is a philosophy. So in my writing, I try and look at as my mentor Sainath says, that when the entire country is fixated at the top 5% of the population, there's no competition looking at bottom 50. And there's life. There are languages, there's life, there are films to be made, there are books to be written, there are stories to be told. Because look, 50 years down the line, when people of that era, let's say today we are in 2075, book writers would look at today's period from say 1995 to 2025 as modern history. And what will they read? If they were to glance through sift through the newspapers of our time, it's as if everybody is like in the Lakme Fashion Week. It's like, cakes are being cut, balloons are being released. It's like blah, blah, blah. India was in some merry land, kind of Disneyland, right? As a reporter, as a journalist, I believe my book, even if it is not read by people, it would be there as a reference point, trying to sort of also bring out what is the other truth, the other half. And so I think that it's also a very conscious effort to document and chronicle stuff that we don't want to hear. We don't want to listen to it. And someone has said, a society that doesn't understand and reconcile with and comprehend the true face of ourselves, we cannot progress. So it's just an attempt to do that. Simplify the story for a layman to understand a very complex problem on which the world is now sort of grappling to come to terms with. And the second is, I don't think I'm giving voice to the voiceless. These are people who have voices. It's an elephant in the room that we don't want to see. I just thought, let me confront this elephant because that's the truth. That's it.
राइट सर एंड जैसे आपने अपने इस किरदार राम राव के थ्रू जितने भी फार्मर्स हैं उनकी लाइफ को ही पोर्ट्रे किया है, दिस इज ब्यूटीफुल. एक चीज कहते हैं कि वॉरियर की स्वॉर्ड होती है और एक ऑथर का पेन होता है. It's similar to that. So, sir, you gave a beautiful answer, and I'll come next to Kalpana, ma'am. Ma'am, आपने भी book लिखी है, Farmer Sutra, and you're living your organic life and doing farming, और आपने अपना lifestyle all over change कर दिया है. So, what is your book about, and what inspired you to write this book?
So this is a memoir. Basically, like the question you asked, the previous question you asked, how did you transition from, being a teacher to this? So it's all there. So it's all there. It's not only just that, it is also more about it's not what the actions we do to shift our lifestyle. It is like, it starts with an idea, it starts with a mindset. Like, who was I before I thought about this? I was somebody else. I had some other thoughts, I had something else. So from there, that mindset shift, how did it slowly come? See, sometimes we say, one fine day something happened and we did it. It's never one fine day. It's been brewing in the back of your mind for some time. A lot of issues have been triggering it. Sometimes the trigger is small, sometimes the trigger is big. So the mindset shift of a person, of a city person who's living a city life. And how did they, it's always interesting, what made you? That's the question everybody asks, what made you? So this has all the answers of, it will tell you like, I was a regular person. I didn't think about all these issues because that's not our primary concern because we are not facing it. Like sir said, he had to document such a lifestyle because he was in that field and he saw somebody. But most of us don't even probably address or see these because our urban-rural divide is so huge. Most of us urbanites, you don't even think farming has to happen in some rural area. Somebody will do it, and then the farmer image that we have in our head, that farmer will do it. It doesn't matter what his life is about. As long as, I go and I can buy food, that's it. Right? So there's a huge divide. So for me, this book was about chronicling what was I before and what brought that change, all those things, in a very chronological manner. So it goes even back before I even started into the organic farming. The previous part tells me what were the changes, what was my dream about. So it will also be actually a book which anybody could relate to. This is not a farming know-how book. I'm nobody to tell anybody how to do farming. Okay, so I would not do that. That's not the kind of book it is. It is about what changes a city person had witnessed which made them want to make this change. And then you also see the plight of farmers. It's all part of it. That comes a little later, but what started it, So from there, and it also talks about somebody's dream. Like for example, I had this dream of having a nice little farm and doing a lot of things. So if you have a dream, and most of us have something like, society tells us this is what we want to do. Many of us, even in students, I see that they would say, I actually want to pursue, I know one of my daughter's friend who wanted to do journalism, but parents were like, no, no, not only money, it's something that, it's not, it's not either safe or it is not this or that, lot of things. They said, no, do engineering. Of course, engineering, doctor, medicine, something like that. And so they go into that, and then what happens is after some time, they know they don't want to do it, to appease their family, to appease the society, because society says this is successful life. If you have done this, you are a successful person. People look upon you. Otherwise, you're a failure. And everybody is scared of what the other person is thinking about me. That's what is our mind voice all the time. We are not thinking about what we want. We are thinking about what others want us to be. So let us be that, So in that quest, half of the life, at least till our 30s, we are literally chasing somebody else's dream. And then we also sometimes don't even give ourselves permission to think that I can do what I want, But you want to prove it to everybody that, listen, I am an engineer. Now I can do farming, because now I've proven to all of you that, So that is the situation we are in, I think. But the young generation, I'm happy to say that there are people who have immediately, they're not going into mainstream anymore. They're very sure what they want to do. And they're picked up and the reason could be that we all came from a family where our parents were lower middle class or middle class, and all they wanted was us to live a good, comfortable life, So they will always push us towards the professions which would give us that life. But this generation is probably into that privileged household, grew up, and they have this choice of choosing something which is off, not mainstream. So that is something that I want to portray here also, that if you have a dream, it doesn't matter who's telling you what. If you have a dream and if you follow that, it will lead to good things in life, So my journey was into farming. So it also talks about passion, of one's passion, and if you're like Sir said, I think journalism, you got into with a lot of passion in it, right? So yeah. So he did that. So he followed it, and there is a joy in it that nothing else will give you. You could be doing what the society has told you, your parents have told you, but you will be miserable in that, probably. But when you follow what you want, you will find that happiness, that elusive happiness that we talk about. So it's also about that. And of course, I know that I initially thought, because Know-How is not a book that I wanted to write. I wanted people who are in urban areas to know through my journey that it's possible for an urban person to get into farming. That was something when I got into it, I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have anybody else doing it. So I was also very skeptical about it. Is it even possible? So 2 years went off thinking, is it possible? So with this book, I thought that there are so many people who wrote back saying that, I have this dream. I'm a software engineer. I'm a lawyer. I'm this, I'm that. But I have this dream of yours, the same dream that you have written about, So people have dreams, and they always question whether this is possible. I'm in a city. What am I going to do? How will it? No, it's not possible. So that is one of the things I thought it will help. Because generally, from somebody's life only we learn, that it is possible. And I also tell that generally, unless we have a role model, we never even think that is possible for us. We want somebody to go and do it before us. Then we say, oh, he has done it, so I can also do it. And unless somebody has done it, we don't think it's possible for a long time. So most of us are in that phase. So I feel it was something, I was actually already documenting my journey. It's not like I had an idea of writing a book from a very long time. It was that I was already chronicling because I wanted to know what I'm doing and all that. And in what I did was, in between all of that, my journey and my thing, I sprinkled a little bit of all the farming wisdom that I collected. How the ecosystem is so interdependent, and how, if you shift or if you remove something in the environment, how it literally has a dominoes effect and everything else gets destroyed, and a lot of things, and how I even chose plants on my farm. I talked about indigenous crops, how actually even when we look at urban spaces, we have trees which are not indigenous trees. We have trees which are ornamental. So the birds won't even come and roost in the ornamental trees. Because birds have the wisdom. They have the knowledge that this is not the tree that I can build my nest in. I won't be safe here. I won't get food from this tree. It has, a myna will roost only on a particular tree. Every bird knows where I want to build my nest. So that's the intelligence of every creature. A little small creature also has that intelligence. And this human being, with all this intelligence, we are poisoning our own food. Which intelligent species would poison their own food? I don't understand. They say that if you, all our processed food, if you keep a milk bikis or any packet chips, biscuit, now it won't go bad. Bacteria won't eat it. Even bacteria won't eat it. You understand? So bacteria has the intelligence that I will not get nutrition from this food, so I will not eat it. But if you keep your rice or dal for one day, it will go bad because there is nutrition. Bacteria will attack it. So when a bacteria and fungus can know something so important about where it is going to get its nutrition, how come such intelligent species we call ourselves and we don't know that knowledge, right? So a lot of such things. What I learned, and how every tree, how can I invite butterflies into my garden? So I have to plant flowering plants which attract butterflies. I have to not only grow food for myself, but I have to grow food for the other the critters and all other organisms which are thriving in an ecosystem. So I planted some berry trees so that, birds can come and they will get some food from there, right? So it is part of, when you talk about organic farming, that's the whole point of it. They don't look at, I grow, I eat, sort of, anthropocentric view of, human and my connection with food. That is not how it is. It is about everybody also. All the other organisms also has to be taken into account. What is there under the soil, the microbes in the soil, the earthworm in the soil, what are they eating, how are they benefiting our environment? And even if one thing is like, if you're putting a lot of fertilizer in the soil, all the microbes are killed. Then you keep adding fertilizer only to make your soil fertile. First you have to stop that. So all of those things sort of in between here and there sprinkle, and I wanted it to read like a novel or a, like a fiction, not like a non-fiction, so that, even somebody who is not into farming, who doesn't even have the aspiration, doesn't matter, but they'll just read it like as if I'm telling a story of my life. So it's interesting. And maybe through that I can, very insidiously, put those thoughts into their head, because if I'm going to preach, nobody is going to listen. So if I tell it like a story, probably, these little things I sprinkle here and there could reach whoever is my reader is or reading. So, and another thing, important point was to write this sort of a book, because you can write a farming journey in any way, right? I could just say this happened, right? And the reason was because when I was in my farming journey, I was desperately looking at some book like this. Somebody, not just any farming book, but like a city dweller who was living a regular city life, and then suddenly they had this bug bites them about farming, and then they are like, they're struggling with this calling and they're trying to make it happen. But, what happened? How did they do it? So I wanted like a companion, somebody I can read their journey, so I will feel like whenever it's discouraging, I would feel encouraged to continue, right? And I didn't find such a book. And Toni Morrison says, if you want to read a book and it's not been written yet, then you should write it. So I wrote it. So that is what is my...
So beautiful, ma'am. And while you were describing your answer, you also talked about dreams. कि सपने देखना आसान होता है, लेकिन उन्हें पूरा करना, उनके पीछे भागना, that is very very difficult. And you being a biology teacher, आपको फार्मिंग के बारे में शायद पहले नहीं पता था, but then you learnt about it, you studied about it, और अब आप एक organic farmer हैं, and your journey has been incredible. Sir, आपने भी जिस तरह से अपनी किताब लिखी है, you've put your heart and soul into it. You wrote about a person, और किसी इंसान की कहानी लिखना, पहले आपको उसकी कहानी जाननी पड़ती है, then you can write about them. So you've done justice to your work, and you've done it very passionately. And in the end, I have this rapid fire for you. So अब मैं आपको एक word देने वाली हूँ दोनों को, and what you have to do is कि whatever comes to your mind, you have to say that thing, right? So the same word and the same thoughts, right? So the first word is agriculture, sir, ma'am.
Lifeline. That's a lifeline for, that's it.
Beautiful. Sir, for you?
Well, it's civilizational edifice of civilizational.
Okay.
Agriculture is the foundation of civilization.
A very thoughtful answer. So the second word is organic farming.
It's respect for land, resources, and all creation on earth. It's not only about us. So,
beautiful. So your answer?
It's a way of existence.
Absolutely. Because without farming, we are nothing actually. Your next word is sustainability.
Ethical. That's the ethical way to live life. You can't take everything for yourself, There's a resource that it has to be, you have to leave it for like they say, what I'm using now, next generation I should leave some for them. I can't just use for my generation and say, okay, let them fend for themselves. That's not how it is. So ethical is what comes to mind.
Right, ma'am. Amazing. And sir, what's your answer?
It's thinking about not just next generation, but generations.
And I love it. मतलब audience जो यहाँ पे cheer कर रही है, clap कर रही है, please keep the energy going. The next question for you is one book you would recommend everyone reads.
Okay, so that's going to be in what I really enjoyed. So, and it will be in lines of the ecosystem and everything, right? So there's a book called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben. I was mind blown because we all think, can I just tell a little bit, because you said just one line comes, the one book, that is one book that I want to tell, The Hidden Life of Trees. And it talks about how the trees, we all see that there's one tree over there, that tree is a solitary, single organism, living organism. It doesn't live like that. It lives in families and communities, it seems. And how they connect is through their roots. The roots are all, under the ground there is so much happening that our eyes are not seeing it. So under the ground, all this network of trees, they are interconnected. And let's say there is a group of trees and one tree has been cut or has been injured in rain or something. This other trees will provide sustenance through roots. They'll keep providing food for the tree so that it becomes healthy and then it is on its own. And there will be this, there'll be like this ancient, in every group we have this tribal leader, right? In villages and all that, there'll be one old man, wise man or woman. So in trees also they have one old wise tree. So even though it is like, due to old age it is dying, they will somehow, other trees, young trees around them keep giving them sustenance so that they'll keep that tree as much as possible alive. So there's a lot of wisdom, so that's something that I really think you should read.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for recommending the book. Sir, one book you would recommend everyone reads?
Can I make it 2? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
If you want to understand rural India, then definitely Everybody Loves a Good Drought by P. Sainath. That book changed my life. And another book that I want every young person this age group must read is a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a doctor in the Second World War. He was a Jew, and he was picked up in the concentration camp, and he survived the Holocaust, and then wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. Everybody should read that book. And of course, Everybody Loves a Good Drought is a non-fiction classic today. So those of you who are interested in rural India, that's where your journey begins.
Right, sir. So now, coming to the next word, that is India.
Vibrant. We are the most vibrant country, I would say. Been to US also, it's not what it is. India cannot be replicated. There's no other place like India. So many languages, like I just crossed border from Chennai, came to Vadodara, and it's a completely different landscape. People are talking different languages. I see signboards in a different, I can't read Gujarati, so I can't. So I mean, you just see, and the folk, the dressing sense, everything is different. Just few kilometers this side, and and within even like if you take Tamil Nadu, it's just, you'll think that it's like Tamil speaking, but every district will have a different dialect, and it will have its own cuisine, it will have its own. So yeah, vibrant is what comes to mind. Very diverse, very vibrant.
And that's the beauty of India. And sir, what's your answer?
Well, it's a coexistence of diversity, a cocktail of ideas, if I were to put it.
A cocktail of ideas, well presented. The next word is youth.
Youth, without any doubt, pride and hope of our country, and for all of us. Yeah, you are the pride and hope of us. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we have such amazing people sitting in front of us, the youth. Sir, your answer?
A fresh flowing river.
So this one is for you because you are the fresh flowing river. Okay, so the next word is, this one is special, Vadodara Literature Festival.
Absolutely, what do you say, scintillating conversations, of course, right? I read the panel, the different panels that are happening across, such wonderful, so diverse conversations and convergence of all these ideas from varied fields, and you're giving it to the youngsters who are going to get into the world, but I'm sure they don't exactly know much about like agriculture or maybe architecture or whatever that you're talking, but they get such insights about it, and it's a very disruptive platform. I feel a very engaging and open to all kinds of topics, and they're ready to listen. So this festival symbolizes all of that, convergence of different ideas and stimulating conversations.
Beautiful, ma'am. And sir, same goes to you, Vadodara Literature Festival.
Well, I see it as a meeting of past generations with the new.
Yes, and I believe the ideas always flow from the the old generation to the new one. And the next word is actually special because we are sitting at this venue right now, the beautiful setup, and the word is Parul University.
It's, I mean, the moment I entered, you know, the one thing was it's so colorful and so vibrant, like mini India only, because everybody from different parts are here, I guess. So, and what would I say? What's the word that comes is very alive and, you know, very lively environment for students to not just learn but thrive, I think. You know, the place looks very nice.
Sir, your answer?
Well, I'll stick to the classical old, how a temple of education should be. I would rather go to this temple.
So according to you, the place where we study is our temple, and that's absolutely true. And like I also, when I entered this fest, the place looked beautiful, everything was beautiful. Here drums baj rahe hain, wahan music baj raha hai. You can say the amalgamation of all the cultures.
Absolutely.
Right. So last word is I.I.M.U.N, who has organized this beautiful event, and we are enjoying it, the Literature Festival. Alag-alag panels chal rahe hain, whether it's agriculture, it's about technology, it's about IT. And what do you have to say about I.I.M.U.N now?
I would say it's a great platform which is allowing you know, the youth of today to actually talk about not just the local but the global issues, you know, because they're addressing it all over the world. They're global, so that's what I hear. And so they are actually disrupting a lot of like, you know, chartered territories, and sometimes they are actually because of their presence, they are actually because this is a youth-led organization, right? So they are having a very strong voice. The youth has a very strong voice through I.I.M.U.N, and I think it is so important in whether it's in our political scenario that is happening, like even when you're talking about like agrarian crisis and we're talking about how youth can be part of it and all of that. So unless there's a platform like this available, how do we bring the youth to actually share their voices and tell them? And so one of the volunteers who was with us, and he has told so much about it, and we are in awe of how things have been happening in I.I.M.U.N. So I'm very proud of how they have organized and given this platform. And I really think that I.I.M.U.N, it's like birthing a new world unto itself. You know, it's bringing on the new world. And completely breaking through the redundant, the old things which are not working anymore, and I don't think they're going to take it sitting down. So they are bringing the change that we are wanting to see, and I think this platform is going to give that to them. Yeah.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much. And the volunteer you're talking about, I had a conversation with her. She was telling me you're so sweet, you're so humble, and she was praising you a lot. So, sir, what's your thought about I.I.M.U.N?
Of the youth, by the youth, for the youth.
Absolutely, 100% correct. So this was it for the rapid fire, and the answers you gave were beautiful. And now I would call Manondya for the felicitation. We have a little token of gratitude for you.
Well, between that and this, let me thank the very vibrant young audience for being so patient and attentive. Thanks to you, and I wish you all the very best in your endeavors, future journeys. Whatever you want to do it well. I'm sure that you will. So thank you very much.